Hi, this is Mitch.
And this is Keegan.
Welcome to The Why. Today we're continuing with part 2 of the podcast from last week. We're looking into America's culture and all that good stuff. Last time we touched on colonialism
and the specific traditions based around why we were not involved with Europe's wars up until 1917. And we had finished discussing the particular trends of the armistice, what had happened then, and why even there was a Second World War. Be careful, there may be a lot of tangents ahead, but hey, it's all interesting and fun, so hope you're ready to figure out some more stuff.
Strap in.
So, last time we had left off, to give a little bit of a recap, we had stopped at...
You should do a previously on The Why, and now do a quick summary.
Okay.
Ready? Previously on The Why.
We had finished discussing the ending terms of the war, of the Great War in 1918. When it had ended, which apparently everybody wanted to end at like 11/11/11. Weirdly enough.
Yeah. It's lucky. You can make wishes on 11/11.
Yeah, there was unfortunately a recorded death at like 10:58 where one sniper shot a guy.
Dang. Gotta get it in under the wire while you can still legally kill someone.
It's sad also. It's really sad because it's kind of... like, you can imagine he was wanting to just go home. He just gets a bullet through the head because some guy decides to be vindictive over his country losing a war. Which I can understand, but still.
Yeah. I mean, it's legal murder. You don't get that chance very often.
No, you don't. However... the quote that was mentioned was that this isn't peace, it's a 20-year armistice, is almost correct if you go one particular version of it. 1939 is when it's widely accepted that World War II broke out. And the American people, didn't get involved until 1942. Because it was December 7th, 1941. But some other people can quote, or can go all the way back to the early 1920s when Japan had started doing invasions into Manchuria and China.
Yeah.
Which, do you know much about that particular time frame for Japan?
Vaguely, all that fun stuff. Attacking Chinese, hating Chinese, doing human experiments on Chinese.
Well,
all that fun
stuff. The specific stuff of it, and I haven't read much into it, so take this stuff with a grain of salt. But basically, part of it was Japan they wanted to be like a great power, like any other country that's up and coming. They want more. There was a couple of things that happened with Russia, Britain, and the U.S. that they decided to step in and take a small port from Japan because they're like, no, you don't get to have that. They didn't give a good reason why. They just said, no, you can't have that. And then there was a big fight that broke out because Japan took it anyways, and then there was just a couple of major atrocities that happened in that area, and that went on the list of things that the Japanese people and the Japanese government especially kept as a way of kind of like a list of bad things that happened to them, and they're trying to get like revenge for it, kind of.
Yeah.
And this is, again, at the time, nothing against the people of Japan nowadays. I think they're great.
You gotta love them. They sure know how to do some stuff.
And there's a particular quote for the Japanese people that, or
by?
Quote about.
Okay.
And
hopefully
it was more.
is...
It's more of a. It was actually like adapted from like, it was from like Israeli folk.
Oh boy, okay.
The exact quote is that the Japanese are like any other people.
Okay.
Only more so.
This is good so far. They're good like every other people.
Only more so.
Okay.
Which speaks to the specific culture at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of what they were doing back then was they practically worshipped their emperor as a god, which is Shintoism, which is another interesting religion that you can look up. But they were and still are extraordinarily intense about...
To live intent? Anyways, continue. They're intense?
Very much so.
Okay.
In that there's a particular soldier, and this should speak to precisely how crazy that can get, who was so wrapped up in the whole, like, stuff that was going on in Japan with how they taught their people, and how they went about, like, indoctrinating them with a level of fanatic fervor about patriotism and what it's like to have an honorable life and other stuff like that.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to do a list there because you did the finger thing, but
yeah,
just one. All right.
Just like I mentioned patriotism and
the rest.
Yeah, or I mentioned patriotism and a sense of honor and what they felt was honorable, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Which there was a particular soldier who was dropped off in the Philippines, in an island in the Philippines in 1944. Dropped off there by his commanders and told to hamper Allied efforts wherever possible and to not surrender until his commander personally came and told him to surrender.
This is the guy, the story where it's like he's just there forever and then they like find him like 20 years later, something goofy like that. Is that this?
Specifically, his name was Hiro Onoda.
Okay.
And he came out of that jungle in April of 1974.
What? That's crazy. That is really crazy, though.
And he still... Oh, yeah. That's the other thing is, he still had a functioning rifle, a box of grenades. Basically...
So he wasn't doing much. Really.
Actually, he was. He was shooting at a lot of the villagers because, like, he wasn't sure if they were actually, like, Allied people or not, but...
Okay.
And they had to fly... The Japanese government had to fly the commander out there. He was running a bookshop by that time.
Really?
They had to fly him out there at great expense to get him to stand down. There was an official, like, ceremony with that. There was a couple of surrenders in 1972, a few in the 60s, a lot more in the 50s. There were still whole, like, units running around in Iwo Jima.
Yeah, that's crazy.
In the late 40s, early 50s.
It's funny. It's really, yeah.
But it shows just how intense things can get. And part of their intensity was essentially like when Hiro Onoda left, or I suppose as the Japanese would say, Onoda Hiro, because they do the last name first and the first name last.
See, yeah.
But his mother had given him a dagger and said, if you were captured, use this to kill yourself with.
Yeah, the whole... Oh, crap. What's the word for it? The ceremonial way they kill themselves? Yeah, that's crazy. Not like crazy, like, oh, that's bad. That's intense. You gotta have strong beliefs to be able to do that.
So, but going back to the whole thing in Manchuria, there was a couple of major incidents with the army kind of going AWOL, because the way it was explained is that the army in Japan at that time was only controlled by the emperor himself. And the government didn't really have much say in that otherwise. And, like, they had decided to do an invasion of Manchuria because they had tried to set up some commercial stuff there. So, some hotels. And then you need to build stuff, like, build places for people to live in so that they can, work at the hotels. And you need to build some transportation systems that they can go there.
Yeah.
And then there was... the Chinese people weren't particularly happy about that, and so there was a couple of incidents that happened. That's what the Japanese called it. Incidents every time. It's like, so... Let's get some army people in there to kind of safeguard it. And there was a few more incidents. They keep going. A few more incidents. And by this time, everybody's like, why are you invading China? We're not. Trust me. This is just because we need more security. And it won't go any further. And then, right as he's saying that, another push forward because there was another incident.
Yeah.
And part of it was they didn't feel like the emperor at the time was up to the standard of leading Japan, so they just basically said...
Did it?
They just did it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And basically, and you might want to do some research on this before you really proclaim it as fact.
Are you oh, okay, yeah. So fact-checked him.
Yeah. So, but that's the basic understanding that I have of it. And so, and that particular concept is wrapped up in a term called Gyakokujo. which is essentially a way of having a pressure valve kind of release where the public, if they need to, and it's done with the right reasons and stuff like that, can disobey government officials if it is considered morally acceptable.
Okay.
And so if they profess to love the emperor more than the people that weren't actually doing anything, then they could actually get away with a light slap on the wrist.
Okay. That's interesting.
Because, there's a lot of stuff going into that. The Navy wasn't as happy with that because they were the ones having to do a lot of the fighting as well.
Yeah.
The Army could do all the boasting it wanted to, but it's the Navy that's really got the big guns. So they kind of have to do all the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
But
do you know what year it was that Unit 761 or 761 started?
Not to my knowledge.
No, you don't? Okay. I don't know if it was around that time or not, but it's the thing where it was basically like the equivalent to like concentration camps stuff that the Japanese were doing to the Chinese. Like it was like human experimentation and the
Unit 731.
731. Yeah, I get my multiples of 3 mixed up. It's really weird. I don't know why. It's like just in my head I remember it's a multiple of 3, and so I just go 731, right?
Not 61.
Got it. Yeah.
But that was in so arguably Japan started the Second World War by attacking Manchuria in 1931. They waged war with China, which they almost won, by the way, because China was very fractured. There were communist elements, there were nationalist elements that didn't want the communists to get a hold of it or Japan to get over it. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But the exact
just like do you have a date on when it starts? I'm just curious if it was going on during this time or it went on
So essentially it started as a research and public health agency, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's how they spun it, is like research. But was it? Does it say a year? If it doesn't, it's not important. I was just curious if it was
not
like.
That I can see.
Okay, I was just wondering it because it'd be interesting if it started like they started doing it as they were doing like at the very beginning, or if they started doing it and then like they were dehumanizing the Chinese more and more and more to like justify the war, and that's what led to it.
Right.
That's what I probably would happen, but I don't know. It'd be interesting. I'm just speculating. But what it would be important is how does America tie into all this?
Well, essentially, it ties in because, again, we were back to not wanting to intervene in the Second World War. So Japan gets involved. They start doing a bunch of stuff. They started looking at their war aims and possibly taking on the eastern half of the Soviet Union, which would have caused the Soviet Union to fall. Had they done so.
Really? Do you think Japan could have taken on all the Soviet Union?
Not all.
But like...
Very specifically, Germany had invaded in June of 1941. You have both of them doing a pincer movement against Russia, where the armies can usually just go, straight back, just keep falling back into their country, and wait for winter.
That's true.
But you have Japan pushing for the other side, and massive amounts of prisoners being taken. I mean, there's records of 2 750,000-man armies surrendering in a month.
Yeah, but Russia's a wild card, dude. You never count anything on Russia. They're the wild card of the world scene. Yeah,
and there were a couple of different factors, but realistically, I think that could have happened. However, Japan decided on its war aims in, I believe it was 1940, took a look at everything, and there was this one weird general who put in a lot of effort to, try to do some wargaming stuff. He was, really weird. You should look him up sometime. I forget the exact name, but he was the one who did the war game towards, trying to figure out how you would do a attack against the U.S. when they're 3,000 miles away. So,
yeah, go ahead. So,
with that said, what they ended up doing was trying to do a lot of naval maneuvers with aircraft carriers, because they only had a certain amount of the Navy because there was a couple of restrictions placed on them. They went with quality. They went with really big, tough stuff. And so they got it out there, got some aircraft carriers within range, as long as they were careful, of an attack on the Pearl Harbor base in Hawaii. And there were a couple of accounts of people who were on the island who were close enough to see the fighter pilots. Some of them waved at the inhabitants.
Oh, really?
With that said, the exact stories of it was essentially they did a lot of like really, really low-flying dive bombers that used torpedoes, like torpedo bombs that would, because everything was still in the harbor, that would basically go really close to the ground. Mm-hmm. You release the bomb, it goes slams into the hull and blows up. Instead of sinking straight down below because they're in harbor.
Yeah.
So they did that to a couple of them. There's several very nasty stories about people who were trapped within the ship and only had a certain amount of air pockets because what the U.S. had done to make them is essentially make the holes that much tougher to ensure, you don't actually bang into something and rip it open.
Yeah.
But that also made it harder to cut open to get the people out.
Yeah.
There's stories of people who survived and had to count the days down, and there was other people who drowned or suffocated.
Did you hear about the story where a guy recently, like, not that recently, like a couple of years ago probably now, of like a chef and the ship sank and he was alive in it? That happened fairly recently. It's interesting. You can see
actually.
There's, might even be on YouTube, but it might be live leak. I don't know. But there's a video of the divers coming in and they're doing like body recovery and they come up and there's just a dude in there alive. It's crazy.
Oh boy. But yeah, the stories are awful because it's not like there's a lot of water going in, yes, but they're in port. They're basically almost beached.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's not going to be that much. They had time to get some of the people out. Mm-hmm. But the
smash cut to midway. And bam! America gives them a new one, baby.
I'd prefer to stick a little bit more on Pearl Harbor because
all right,
there's a few other stories.
You can talk about Pearl Harbor more. Also, I'm pretty sure I redlined it right there when I did my smash cut thing. But oh well, it was worth it. Yeah. Continue.
But essentially, after they did that, a bunch of them were already sunk and blowing up. There were a couple of bombs that were dropped from really high altitudes, like at the very least 8,000 feet. And usually you don't want to do that because you usually have the ships like moving around all the time. You have a very fast moving plane, so you have to do really good calculations and hope you get lucky.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was one particular bomb that was dropped, and I want to say it was on the Arizona. I don't remember which ship it was, but that bomb had the unfortunate distinction of going either through the smokestack and down, or breaking through the deck of the ship down to where they kept all the ammunition. The ammunition. And we're talking about 16-inch guns.
Yeah, yeah.
We're talking about guns that have shells that are the size of this table.
They can't see how big this table is.
Okay, so think about the car you have outside. That's the equivalent weight of these shells.
Okay. So a lot bigger than this table. This is a very small coffee table we're using right now.
It's they pack it down, but yeah.
Okay.
But essentially you have that. You have several 100,000 rounds of ammunition, of regular old ammunition, and several other chemical weapons. The exact explosion was recorded to have launched the ship up 10 to 15 feet in the air and broke it in half.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And they had just refilled the tanks on these things to get gas back in them, so that way they could go home for Christmas.
Yeah.
The day before, by the way, so Saturday rather than Sunday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. And then there was supposedly the sailors who jumped into 6 inches of oil.
Oof.
On top of the water.
Oof.
And there's a lot of fire going on, so you can imagine how that went.
Yeah.
But that severely angered the American people, and we're like, okay, you're going down. And so that kind of destroyed any last remnants of the tradition of getting involved in non-intervention.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff going on with that. I think that was the post-war years after we dealt with Japan. We got involved in Korea to try to keep Japanese influence from taking over again because they had kept doing it a lot.
In Korea?
Yeah.
Isn't Korea more keeping the Russians? Or not the Russians, but the communists?
I feel like both sides, kind of. They wanted to keep Russia away from that. They wanted to keep the Soviet Union
I think it was more about, get those darn commies out of here.
Yeah, there was that as well. But I feel like it's both elements.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, because you can look and, it kind of seems like after Pearl Harbor that America has had a long history, or not a long, well, you know what I mean, but, throughout our history, we have, the worry of being attacked again has always kind of been present. Because after after Pearl Harbor, then it's oh no, the Russians are going to attack. Oh no, the Russians are going to attack. And there's that mentality. Yeah, the Cold War. And then, after that, you get kind of basically almost right after that kind of starts dying down, it's 9/11, and then we're back to, oh no, terrorists, oh no. It's always, America kind of has that weird mentality now where it's always like, we're going to get attacked. Which is interesting. It's changed a lot.
But yeah, that kind of like, that destroyed any real premise of that, because part of it is essentially, there was a book I read that like listed the last days of the war against Japan. So in August, where it was called The Last Train from Hiroshima. Great book. I would suggest it if you could look it up and get it.
Do you remember who it's by? Because that'll probably make it easier for people to look it up.
Let me just Google that so that way they can have the name.
Okay. I also read an interesting book one time about an American pilot who was helping train the Chinese pilots. Don't remember the title. Don't remember the author. If you can find it, let me know. I don't remember.
Or what were you talking about on that one?
Oh, it was just it was like, I think it was it was an autobiography about a guy who was in World War II. He went over and was helping the Chinese on an air base and like training the pilots and stuff like that.
I think there was actually a movie made about it.
Really? See? I should look that up.
But the exact book that I was talking about is The Last Train from Hiroshima, book by Charles Pellegrino.
Okay.
Don't read it if you don't have a strong stomach, though.
Okay.
Because it has a revised second edition to Hell and Back. I read like the first edition, The Survivors Look Back. But it was stuff that dealt with the immediate aftermath of the nuclear bomb going off in both cities.
Have you heard that thing where there's a guy who
survived both of them?
Yeah, he survived it and was like, I gotta go to work, and he went and then he survived the other one. It was insane.
The basic idea for him was essentially, I think he had a severe burn on one side of his body because he could only get like half of his body covered in mud to keep the heat, the dawn from the Pika dawn, as the Japanese called it, the flashbang. Burned like half of his body pretty badly.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's crazy.
He tried to go find his family who had gone to Nagasaki. He's like, there's no way that they'll go for that one. They just dropped a bomb on Hiroshima. They won't go for that one. There were a lot of survivors that tried to go to Nagasaki.
Yeah. Was it Hiroshima or Nagasaki that was the one that was the backup one? I remember there's one where it's like they were going to go for a different, and then the conditions, they changed.
Nagasaki.
Was it Nagasaki? Okay.
Where they had the second bomb going on, and then there was clouds on one of them, and then they were running low on fuel, and then there was another thing with the clouds in Nagasaki, and then they just dropped it anyways, and it landed in a valley. It didn't give a firestorm like it gave Hiroshima, which don't try to imagine it. It's awful.
It's also interesting too because I think the stat is that more people died from fire bombings than from both the atomic bombs because of just constant bombings like crazy.
Well, part of it is it technically yes, because they were being bombed for a lot longer. Under fire bombing. The nukes.
It kills fast though.
Yes,
they get the job done fast.
So there's pictures actually that are in the book and like online. I'm sure you can view them if you just Google it, about a before and after picture. The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. You have the entire city, looking normal as you do. You have just the usual, the high rises, the houses, the stuff like that.
Parks, maybe.
Cars. I don't think it gets that detailed.
Okay.
That's the unfortunate part. But you have all that. The next picture over, everything is rubble and steaming.
Yeah,
at best.
That's crazy. What's even crazier is, have you seen that, like the chart where it compares those bombs to the Tsar bomb?
The Tsar bomb, yes.
Yeah, that would be insane.
That was reported to have an 8-mile wide fireball.
Yeah, that's insane, dude. Imagine if we went to war with those. We'd be dead.
Well, the big thing is with those big bombs is that you don't get the radiation poisoning usually. It just gets launched up into space basically and just stays up there until it becomes harmless.
Yeah,
to a point.
Yeah,
but
we'd still probably be dead.
It's the fireball, because you have an 8-mile wide fireball. That's going to be a rather sizable heat burst that will melt practically anything. But the actual stories were, vaguely awful. There was one guy there was a doctor actually working in Hiroshima at the time in like his lab.
Late one night?
What's that?
I said late one night?
Not. I might have actually said that. But like early in the morning. It was early morning hours, like 8, 9 o'clock, I think.
Oh, okay.
So he gets there, he starts working, and then the bomb goes off, and this guy's wearing glasses. Mm-hmm. They don't shatter, but something happens with a shockwave, kind of like messes with his head a little bit, and he doesn't need the glasses anymore.
Oh, really?
Weird.
It was a
weird thing.
What's do you know where you read that at?
It was the book that I was actually.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
That's cool.
Everybody else.
Really weird.
Yeah, everybody else. There was one woman who had decided to wear black one day and got kind of vaporized.
I think a lot of people kind of got vaporized.
But there's a couple other stories. There was the exact stories. I remember I could only read like 2 or 3 chapters at a time because I used to be a voracious reader.
Yeah.
But anymore, it's hard to kind of like.
Yeah, it's hard to find the time. Definitely.
But another reason why I couldn't is there's a lot of descriptions of like this was mostly civilians, women and children, basically, because they had conscripted practically every single fighting man they could.
Yeah.
And, like, you have the firestorms where you have, like, actual, like tornadoes that keep going up. There was radiation stuff. They couldn't see the sun because of how smoky and hazy it got.
It's crazy that they rebuilt the cities, though. That's impressive.
And there's still... They actually have a memorial for each one.
Yeah, but...
look up the book if you get the chance. It's important because it kind of reminds you of the human suffering that went on.
Yeah. Do you want to tell them the title one more time in case you sold them through this?
Okay, so the title of it is The Last Train from Hiroshima, and it had a second revised edition called To Hell and Back. The Last Train from Hiroshima, and then the ending of the first original title was The Survivors Look Back.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I might read that at some point.
So... the story focuses on individuals such as Tsutomu Yamaguchi, a hibakusha, translated as an explosion-affected person who was the only person confirmed by the government of Japan to have survived the Pikadan flashbang of both attacks. And it's just the story of how the civilians responded, and it's a story of how everything was put together, including the pilots, kind of like imagining having to live with that. But specifically, the story of Yamaguchi, he was an employee of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, had been in Hiroshima on a business trip in August 6th, 1945, when the little boy atomic bomb was dropped about 2 miles from the hypocenter of Yamaguchi, which was also, by the way, it was supposed to like give off like 50 kilotons of energy.
Yeah.
It was considered a dud with 10.
Oh, wow.
With 10
It was really only
kilotons.
10. That's interesting.
And it just, yeah. There could have been as many as 165 double survivors. Pellegrino documents the random nature of survival, with people who had been outdoors wiped off the face of the earth in a fraction of a second, while others who had been indoors and were afforded protection and shock cocoons from the gamma rays and the heat blast survived. So, people who had been outdoors or exposed to windows facing the explosion and were wearing dark-colored clothing received severe burns, while those wearing white suffered less of an effect, because white reflects.
True,
obviously.
true.
Let's see.
Do you think that there will ever be, let's say, like an armed conflict between nations where there's nuclear arms used again?
I think it's almost inevitable.
Really? Like, armed, like, actual nations going at it and doing it?
Very specifically. I do feel that they will launch a few, but not actually do more than that. It's kind of like warning shots.
It's hard to do a warning shot with a nuke.
Like, and when I say warning shot, I'm not talking about the city. The city's just gone. I'm just talking about the country. So, for example, say, worst case scenario, people start launching nukes at America. Mm-hmm. Usually, if you're going to do a warning, you're going to go after, like, I don't know, Fargo, North Dakota, if you're doing a warning shot.
I don't think they're going to bomb Fargo, North Dakota.
But you get...
If you're launching nukes at America, you're going to have to do it to, like, you're going to have to wipe out America. Because America's kind of thing is, you take us out, we're taking the Earth with us. That's kind of like our...
I feel like if you're just doing, like, warning shots, you start with stuff that's not important. Or you start with lesser civilian stuff. Like, we got more here, that sort of thing.
Yeah. But so, do you think someone would ever nuke America? I feel like if you're nuking America, you would have to honestly wipe out a lot of people to make it worth it. Because otherwise... the mutual assured destruction. If the government survives at all, you're hosed.
Oh,
you'd have to be able to blow up all their nukes, and I'm sure we have secret nukes. I'm sure there's that mountain bases and crap.
I know. I feel like it will be used at some point again, but if it's going to be anything, realistically speaking, it's going to be on military targets or only, and it's going to be by America, not by any other country. No other country is stupid enough to actually try to launch one.
Yeah, well, North Korea.
They're posturing.
You don't think they'd ever actually do it? I bet North Korea would do it if they want. It'd be stupid, but they're kind of stupid.
Not they. Specifically...
Kim Jong-un. Well, all of them are kind of stupid because they haven't risen up against him yet. But, yeah, Kim Jong-un is... They're probably pretty stupid. But I think they're actually not that stupid. I think it's like... the reason they haven't launched them is because they know... If he launched the nukes, that'd give America a reason to come to war. And I'm sure he knows that they can't take on America. I mean, they did win once, technically, but...
Well, that was because we weren't putting our back into it. We just gotten out of the Second World War. They were also fighting a split faction as well. We didn't want to blow up the entire split faction.
That's true.
So, you get the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like, personally, if we ever see a nuke used in a hostile way again, I think it'd be more from, like a terrorist thing. I can't see nations really doing it, unless it was, like, a rogue nation that was, like, attacking someone and they knew that they couldn't retaliate, because it's like suicide if you can attack
So for example,
anyone.
You're talking more along the lines of say Iraq going after Jordan or some small
like
really
that.
tiny thing there where they don't actually have it, or weirdly enough Belgium. I meam, they're small.
That's true. That could happen, I suppose. I don't really see. I'd be surprised if America ever gets attacked first, or if there's just a mass invasion of America, I could see America going like, screw you guys, we're going nuclear. I could 100% see that happening.
I wonder if they would actually ever say that, just as he's doing it.
Screw you guys. I 100%, like, if America legitimately got invaded and it was like, we're losing this, guys. Even if we weren't losing it, even if it was just like, say Chinese came and something and like started invading, I feel like we'd nuke the crap out of them. I feel like America would probably do that.
And now this brings it to the conclusion. Would we actually survive that kind of... do you think there's ever even a chance that somebody would ever attempt a land invasion of America?
I don't know. It'd have to be a lot different conditions, I feel like.
Would you mind elaborating a little bit?
Like, I feel like in modern America right now, I don't think anyone could really invade, honestly. But if there is, like, some future, like, decades and decades, maybe even centuries in the future, where it's like America's not what it used to be, then yeah, that's reasonable. But, like, right now, that'd be a hard war to win.
Well, part of it is, look at the amount of land you have to conquer.
Yeah.
Now, theoretically, if you take the capital, you take the country.
See, but here's the thing, is they can, like... we went through the trial by fire during Cold War, so we're prepared for these things. Because, like, there's that mountain base, forgot what it was called. It's like in the Alps, not the Alps, the Appalachians, or something like that. Where it's like, if, like, I don't know if we can swear on this podcast or not, if the crap goes down, then it's like, our government goes there, and it's a base in a mountain that can withstand nukes, and it's just they just chill in there and go, let's shoot nukes here.
I really hope they wouldn't be chilling, you know.
Well,
I really hope they'd be worried about the population, but still.
Yeah, I kind of went through a phase where I was into that, like, the hypothetical, like, scorched earth scenarios, which is interesting because there was, like, a proposed fighter jet during that time where it was nuclear powered, and it was like end of the world. Like, we're just doing crap. It could shoot nukes. It was also nuclear powered, and it dumped nuclear waste, like a ton of nuclear waste. It could, like, be in the skies indefinitely, and just dumping nuclear waste on the land, shooting nukes.
That is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But going back to our actual stuff there.
We kind of got on a tangent with the nukes, but I don't know. Nuclear stuff's kind of interesting.
But yeah, going back through that, like World War II kind of like ended our willingness to kind of stay out of stuff, because at that point we'd been attacked. Everybody else was just suffering from severe problems. So, for example, Germany, after 1945, after the reparations, there are pictures of people, like, actually, like, wheeling around massive wheelbarrows of the German currency. Marks, yes. Because they become so worthless because they printed off so many of them.
That was after World War I, wasn't it? Isn't it when they had to
to
pay?
a lesser extent. But World War II was where they had to really pay everything. Because, I mean, you don't just, exterminate 6 million people because of racial views, or more, yes, way more, and just go back to, hey, we're sorry, we kind of elected a guy who made us do all this.
Yeah, it's kind of a telling story how easy it is for the general public to just get manipulated into being, like, horribly evil.
Actually, there is an interesting story based around that, and kind of like the interventions since then, we'll finish that. We'll do that story in a little bit, but
yeah,
the interventions kind of like scaled up from there. You have Korea in 1950. You have Vietnam in the 60s. The Cold War was kind of its own thing that was weird.
It's during all this time though, because like the reason we went to war in those two places
was because of communist
was because of the Cold War, yeah.
And then you have the Persian Gulf in the 90s.
Yeah.
You have, like, the War on Terror, which kind of really kicked it in. And
it's
then
interesting,
you have
too, with Afghanistan, because, like, in Afghanistan's an interesting country when you look back at stuff, because it's like, when Russia invaded, and it was during the Cold War, and we're like, hey, Osama, go haze these Russians.
That's the basic idea, and there are actually parallels to a Mexican terrorist, and no offense to Mexican people, you guys are great. And I know that some of you some of you who are historically minded might revere this guy as a patriot. But back in, like, the World War I days, there was a guy by the name of, what was his name?
I don't know who you're talking about. Cesar Chavez.
No.
No. The drug lord guy who everybody loved.
Hold up. Let me just think for a second.
Right.
It wasn't Geronimo. That was an Apache guy.
Geronimo.
It was, I forget the exact name, but he was pretty famous at the time because, he had tried to take back some of the territories and, ride across the border and do all that sort of stuff. It was, oh man, I am this close to getting his name.
Oh, dang, that's the worst. The tip of the tongue, that's...
Pancho Villa. That's the name he's known by. Okay. It's probably not the name he actually had.
Oh, yeah.
But... there was a lot of, like, similarities between the two, believe it or not, between him and Osama bin Laden, in the fact that we thought we could actually, work with him, train him, use him as an ally.
Yeah.
But that didn't turn out as we'd hoped either way. But interesting little parallel there, which we might want to look into later on.
Yeah.
So, looking at all of this, do you think it was wise for us to ever be non-interventionist?
To ever be I would say, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like we may have probably lost our way a little bit and become a little bit too much of an empire.
Fair,
because we are kind of we're an emperorless empire.
Well, the basic idea is essentially, it was the same thing with the British Empire for a while, but after World War I, there was a lot of, like, public backlash on what you're doing. So the thing is, the way the governments thought was in World War I when they started making the agreements and stuff. It was done in secret. They did all these little things where, okay, you'll get this province, and you guys will get this province. There was an interesting little story about Italy where literally both sides are just like, it's like Italy's just, if you can imagine them being personifications, it's like the Italy ambassador is just sitting in a room. Britain walks in and goes, so you want to join us in the war? We'll give you this province, and this province, and this province, and all this money, and da-da-da-da-da, and then they walk out, and then the German guy walks in, having overheard what they were going to offer, and then, is that all they offered you? We'll offer all that along with this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, Italy's got a funny history with world wars.
And not only that, but it's just like, it's open auction, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time the documents were released by the Bolsheviks in 1918, everybody had lost millions, like 10 million soldiers, 7 million civilians at the end of World War One.
Yeah.
And by that point, everybody was like, "Really? We went to war over that?"
Yeah, yeah.
They were all very, very angry.
Yeah, it was essentially a pointless war. It kind of was.
Fair, but I feel like to an end it was, but it decided a lot of stuff.
It did decide. The results altered human history. Don't get me wrong, but it was fought for pretty much no reason. Because a duke was killed, an archduke.
Which, well, it was, the exact reasonings were, yes, the archduke was killed. But it was an archduke of a country that was neighbor to Serbia called Austria-Hungary and no longer exists.
Yeah, yeah.
However, the problem is, once he was killed, there was an ultimatum sent by Austria-Hungary, because, you don't just let them get away with killing a diplomat. You can't.
Yeah.
They sent a bullying demand to Serbia saying, if you want to remain a country at all, give us this, and this, and this, and this, which would basically eviscerate Serbian sovereignty. So they send a message to Russia, who they are allied to, because of Otto von Bismarck. Saying, hey, help.
Yeah,
help.
yeah.
And then he goes, okay, starts mobilizing. Germany sees that and goes, why are you mobilizing? Don't do that. Please stop doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it spirals out of control, but I mean, essentially the start was really pointless in the grand scheme. Like, it's not worth that many people dying, really.
Right, and I think most people thought, it's going to be a quick war. Call it good.
Isn't that thing, is it World War One, the one where they said it'll be over by Christmas? Is that I feel like they say it in almost every war.
Specifically, that was the one, yes, it started in August, and the Kaiser, which also translates to Caesar, by the way, shows you how old the world is. Because, but the Kaiser specifically says to his troops that you'll be home before the leaves fall.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
But also, and going back to another question on the ending docket for this particular topic, do you think we're becoming too interventionist, or do we need to keep getting involved in these situations?
It's hard, because it's like, on one hand, you don't want to overplay it because it's like a waste. We're kind of wasting resources. We're getting our hands dirty and things we don't want to and stuff like that. But on the other side, it's like you're protecting your interests, Because like if we do nothing at the long end, it might end up backfiring on us. But oftentimes we do something and it backfires on us. Well, it's kind of a catch-22.
Well, I feel like if it's going to backfire, which way do you want to go out with that? Is it just going to be like, well, we did nothing and that didn't really work out? So
that's true.
Do you want to conserve your people, or do you want to ensure that to the world you try to do something and ended up spinning out of your control anyways?
Yeah.
Where would you prefer to go?
I mean, personally, I would like to see diplomacy tried more first. I feel like that is something that America should try to improve on, is doing diplomatic solutions. But obviously, we have times where we have to intervene, like...
Oh, yeah. There is one important detail, is that most people think of diplomacy as kind of like the weakling strategy out. You kind of like,
hey, it works.
Conflict.
Yeah.
But it can be used just as sharply as a sword in any situation. The Mongols proved it.
That'd be an interesting to do a podcast on the Mongols. The Mongols they're insane. They're great. They got their act together. Those bows and arrows on horses.
Well, that's actually kind of a tradition that goes all the way back to ancient times, but we're going to have to go into that on a different one.
Yeah, probably.
But essentially, the whole thing with how World War II ended, there was a lot of problems with like war criminals and stuff like that. But you remember the Nuremberg trials, right?
After World War II, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you remember the particular phrase that most of the German higher ups, especially, but even German soldiers who were being tried for war crimes?
Yeah, I was only following orders.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which, this is kind of interesting. It's a little making light of the situation, but I had a job a while back, right? And the person who's running this place was kind of crazy. And me and, like, one of my friends who at the job, we realized we would probably have been Nazis. Because, like, a whole bunch... She'd give us crazy things to do, and it was like, you know, I don't want to do this. I feel like it's wrong, but also I don't want to start trouble, and I don't want to be the odd man out and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting. I mean, it's like a microcosm of it, obviously, but it's like... I could see how you could very easily slip into being a Nazi. Like, I'm not saying I am a Nazi or anything close to one, but I'm saying I could see how an average Joe could slowly progress to being a Nazi.
Now,
or at least not necessarily Nazi, but being, like, taken by very
extreme ideologies.
Like extreme ideologies, exactly.
But there was a particular experiment, you might have heard it, by the Milgram trials. Do you ever remember hearing anything close to that?
An experiment?
Yeah.
I'm really close to the mic. That might have been really loud.
It's called the Milgram trials.
Give me the deets.
All right. So, for those of you who don't know, the Milgram trials were started in 1961, by a scientist. I don't remember his first name, but his last name was Milgram. So, where he had put an ad in a newspaper for, like college students, basically, because, they'll do anything for food.
Mm-hmm.
He put an ad out specifically looking for a teacher to teach to a learner. He would be running the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And a few people signed up. And they were set in a room in front of a panel with walls around them, kind of, and they had a listener on the other side of the wall who would be answering questions that they would be giving.
Oh, this is the electric shock one. Okay.
And what ended up happening is they would progress through the series of questions, and if the listener got the questions wrong, they would be electrocuted. And there was a certain point where the listener on the other side of the wall was told to get the questions wrong. And important detail here, none of the listeners were actually being electrically shocked. They were just, the college students were just being told that they were doing this.
And they're like making and like acting like they were shocked, right? Yeah.
Yes. Now, there was a certain point where they were told to, like, get the questions wrong, or if you have a certain amount of, like, certain questions wrong, you get up to, like, 9 or 10 questions wrong, you're going up to a 450-volt shock.
That's hot. That's high.
And, like, there was a certain point where they have the listener, like, start making, like, groaning sounds, start banging on the walls, and start yelling, "Please stop shocking me, I have a heart condition." And person who is, like, administering the electric shocks, it turns to the guy and goes, "I don't like this. Can we stop doing this? He sounds hurt. He sounds sick." The experiment requires it. You have to do this. There is no other way. Mm-hmm. And there was a certain point where the listener would just stop making noise, making it think that they had, and that was considered to be a wrong answer. So more electrical shocks, and this coming from a people who had been indoctrinated in the idea of more of good people who are part of the country have a moral obligation to ignore orders that are evil or otherwise. These kids who had grown up in that society had been willing to give the full 450-volt shock several times to an already unconscious person just because somebody in a white coat told them to do it.
Yeah, it's the lab coat effect. It's the same thing where, like, if you wear a reflector vest, you can get anywhere. Anywhere. You can get it behind the scenes, anywhere you can get in concerts for free. As long as you look like you know what you are doing and you're in a position of authority, you can get anywhere.
Yeah, and the big thing with the reason why, like, that is actually the reason why they said they were just following orders. Think about who's at the top. Think about Adolf Hitler and the rest of the Nazis who were willing to imprison and shoot people just for not following orders, including your family if you were unlucky enough to have that.
Unlucky enough to have family? That's funny.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that is.
If you were unlucky
funny
enough to have, like, family be in the, like, firing line. Basically.
I know what you meant, but it was just funny wording.
Yeah, I know.
Funny stuff.
So
pretty
There's usually pretty good reasons for getting involved in wars, but the U.S. has gotten involved in a massive amount of them. So it's kind of an interesting, open-ended question that leads to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what do you? I kind of answered it. What do you think? Like, do you think we should have gotten involved in Afghanistan? Do you think we should have gotten involved there?
Somewhat, but not to the extent that we are now. Go in, deal with stuff on the ground as needed, try to keep peace a little bit, and then try to install a government. Try to install stuff that actually works.
I will say, I don't know if I agree with the idea of installing a new government, because, like, who are we to say that our way is the best way?
Right. I mean like, I'm not talking about installing democracy. I'm talking about installing somebody.
Yeah.
And so get in there, start doing some diplomatic stuff, like trying to get a new person at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Once you feel like it's been steadied, step out. There's such a thing as overstaying your welcome. I feel like we've long since done that.
Here's the thing, though. You pull out too much, you get like ISIS coming. It's a whole... Because you don't want to create a power vacuum.
Fair.
It's a whole...
Right, you do that over...
canoodle.
Right. The thing is, like, it should have been finished off within the decade of 2000 and 2010.
Yeah, well...
I feel...
2000... Oh, between 2000 and 2010, you say?
Yeah. Like, don't stretch it out like we have now.
There's a lot of money to be made, though, and a lot of oil over there.
And we can get that elsewhere. Or at least get it in trade deals rather than just being over there.
It's cheaper, and you make more money. I'm just saying.
You and your mercenary ways.
I mean... Janie did work for Halliburton. That is a thing. Halliburton made a lot of money from those wars.
But yeah, these kinds of questions just don't have open ends, or don't have open and shut cases. You have to find out.
Well, it's like you could have had a set like decision. I'd say like if you were a brand new nation and doing stuff, but now it's like we've already intervened in some stuff. So now it's like, where do we go? Is this worth it? Is it not? It's like too complicated now. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, that does make for good conversation topics.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, in review for all this, we had to change a lot of stuff. And I mean a lot of stuff. What that usually translates to is just unrest and stuff like that. And I feel like our country has done very well with that. Think about what they had to go through just to even get to the point where we can intervene. Our country started 250 years ago. And that's being... might be a little bit off depending on when they got here in colonialism, but...
You do it from like 1776. It's 250. You can just say 250. That's fine.
But, like, we survived a civil war. We survived a war of independence with Britain. 2 of them, if you consider, like, how we approached the War of 1812. And we were able to kind of help guide the world through World War I and World War II.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we have done some good in the world.
Yeah.
No country, no person is great at adapting to change like that, at that kind of a pace. Nobody's great at it. We didn't do too bad.
I feel like America is interesting because they really did, like, were able to skyrocket, basically, because the World Wars just basically propelled us into, like, superpowered them.
Exactly, that's the idea. And there's a certain point where you kind of need that extra oomph to kind of keep things stable.
So, question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see American culture and stuff going in the next 250 years?
That's a long way to conjecture.
Yeah. If you can predict this accurately in the future, you'll basically be like, what's the guy that's always on the History Channel? Nostradamus. You'll be on the History Channel if you get this right, so no pressure.
I highly doubt that. But I feel like... First off, we already have a craze about technology. It's only going to get worse as things go on. So I feel like at that point we'll have proper like Android stuff going on with people being able to do that. Like, you know,
we're like being able to do that, or like being able to make androids, or both.
I'm gonna go with both here.
Because it'll probably be. They already kind of have those.
But I'm talking like fully developed personalities.
Yeah, okay.
That. Like, where you have androids being people. Mm-hmm. Which also raises some interesting
Ooh, that's going to be a whole thing. We'll have slaves that are them. It'll be a whole
Is that really ethical or right, though? Because we haven't done well with people of different skin color. How do you think we're going to react to people that we make?
Oh, yeah, that'll be a whole big thing, and then there'll be the singularity. And they're going to kill us all or make us slaves or something.
I mean, would that be such a bad thing?
Yeah, it would be. I don't want to be a slave.
Well, a good thing you won't have to see it then.
That's true.
Because look at how awful we are to each other on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever see where there's actual androids, though. Because
really?
I feel like most robotics right now, it's very specialized.
Fair.
And I feel like that's where it'll continue to go, is very specialized automation stuff. And I doubt we'll see, like, the home servant robot. I feel like there might be some, but I feel like it'll be, like, a novelty thing. Because, like, why make like, a whole robot to build a car when you can make a mechanical arm that's all you need to make?
Fair.
You know?
I do see where you're going with that. But some other stuff I feel like the written word is going to go way down. In like the actual written word.
Oh, like
books.
Like print. Yeah.
Print.
Yeah.
That's gonna go downhill.
I don't know though, cause like hipsters, cause like vinyls, those are going downhill, and now like that's super. You can buy vinyls at Walmart now.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. So who knows? Weird. There could be a hipster movement in the future of like just
fair, but
print.
Even then, it's still like.
But I see what you mean. I'm sure it already is like.
In decline. I mean, I like it more than most other people.
Yeah.
But anyway, other stuff. I feel like we might actually find the next energy source before then. Maybe.
Oh, I would hope.
Maybe.
I would hope. Yeah. In 250 years. Yeah, I would hope.
Well, by then we probably might have burned through that energy source and moved on to another one.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we go through energy at a ridiculous rate. Virtual reality is more than going to be a thing. It's going to be a regular component of everyday life.
Yeah, I could kind of see that.
Or more accurately, virtual reality, great and all, but augmented reality is where it's at.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. With virtual reality, I could see it getting really big, but it's got to get a lot cheaper and a lot cooler first. Mm-hmm. Because like the big bulky thing, though.
Yeah, I mean that's just not streamlined at all. It's not really good. But I also feel like we're going to get... I don't know if it's going to be anything like what you might read as part of an apocalypse kind of thing, where you have like a singular government overseeing the entire world, and something goes wrong, that kind of thing.
Oh, like the whole new world order type of jazz.
Exactly. Yeah. That's that kind of stuff, and then taking over and trying to outlaw certain religions. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I don't want to rule it out. It might.
Yeah, it's a long time. Who knows? A lot of stuff can happen.
And honestly, I feel like most communist governments are going to go down. By that
they're already pretty much down.
I mean,
there's not very many communists left. Cuba's not going to be communist very much longer. They're opening up now.
They're starting to really
They're going like, oh boy, McDonald's is dope as heck.
Along with other stuff. It helps to have, public faces who play baseball and get them actual good PR.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like most of them are going to go down. If Kim Jong-un isn't stupid enough to try to just kill off his country first.
Yeah. Have you... well, that's a whole nother tangent. I'm not going to get on that.
Not yet, no.
Yeah.
But I feel like our society is going to advance to the point where we're going to be able to eliminate a lot of, like, problems with healthcare, especially. Because look at the advances we're already making. We've gotten to the point where we're able to do heart transplants. We're able to transplant practically every single organ and, like, thing in the body, except for the brain.
Do you think we'll see brain transplants? Because that's crazy.
We already do that. Skin grafts.
Skin is an organ.
Technically, yeah. We just don't think of it as such. But I don't think we'll see brain transplants because that would require like doing full-on like genetic therapy to actually get a new human body, basically. Because you're going to end up loading a new person's consciousness into an old body.
We could get to, crap, what's that movie called?
Ghost in the Shell?
No, not anime.
Hey, it had a live action release.
Whatever, it's still anime. Crap, I almost had it. The Island with Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh.
Ewan McGregor. And it's about, like, they live on this place that's like this nice island, and they're all actually, spoiler alert, clones. And they're actually, like, millionaires' clones. And then when the millionaires need organs, they say, hey, you got to go to the island. Like, it's a paradise and stuff. And they just take them to a back room and, like, cut out their liver and use it. It's crazy.
Might have to look it up and watch it sometime.
It's interesting.
But
it's
I feel like, yeah.
kind of garbage, honestly.
I mean, hey, you can make that really fun because there's several movies. I've watched the Alien franchise the entire way through. The first one's great. The rest of them are not good. So you just turn it into
Two's good. Two's good.
Two's okay.
Two's a good action movie.
But you just break it down like you're a film critic. Like, how is this going to go wrong? Oh, look at that. Who's going to die first?
Oh, yeah.
Fair, turn it into a kind of a comedy thing. That's what I found, where you can make those really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
But generally, I feel like we're gonna be able to break down a lot more stuff when it comes to like being able to say increase our lifespans for one.
Yeah, for sure.
Take out a lot of stuff like like a lot of cancer stuff. We've already gotten around to CRISPR. We can easily like do gene therapies to where you can take out the bad stuff without having to worry about like major health risks, like say surgery to take out a tumor in someone's chest, for example, or having to put them through radiation, which basically starts killing off everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like we could really turn that around, but I'm not sure exactly how far we would go though on certain stuff, or if we'll even be there in 250 years.
That's true. I bet humans will still be around in 250
We're
years.
like cockroaches.
We kind of are. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Well,
subscribe to PewDiePie?
No.
Throw that in there. Don't even say no. Yeah, subscribe to PewDiePie.
No.
Continue. Don't even.
No.
Oh my gosh. This podcast is over. Continue, though. Do you have anything else to add?
Well, just don't take us for fact, at least at face value. Make sure you're doing your proofreading, and if you'd like, look up some of the stuff that we mentioned. It might be interesting for you guys to read.
Yeah, we'll link all the books in the description. Just kidding, we're not going to do that. I don't know.
No, but I fully expect you guys to be smart enough to look them up yourself.
I don't. And
such little faith.
Okay, and with that, this has been The Why. Alright, let's end this thing.